Ho, 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 ho! Hello, boys and girls. Hello. Oh my, how busy we are here at the North Pole today. Ho, ho, ho! Boys and girls, this is Wednesday, and goodness gracious, there's only 2 more days to Christmas. Ho, ho, ho! Boys and girls, I guess that's why we are kept so busy. Of course, Santa could never do all the work alone. Goodness, no. Santa has many little helpers, and the elf who perhaps does more than any other is a little guy by the name of Jingle-O the Brownie-O. And he's only 2 feet high, and he is always busy. Boys and girls, did you ever wonder where all the snow comes from? Well, ho, 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 Jingle-O, he is responsible for it. When snow is needed, Jingle-O just shakes the clouds, and there's your snow. And perhaps you don't know where all the Christmas trees come from. Ho, 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 boys and girls, Jingle-O, yes, he plants them. Oh, yes, boys and girls, Jingle-O is a very busy little elf. And there are many other duties he has, too. And if you listen carefully to the words of this song, you'll hear of all the many things Jingle-O does. Ho, 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 boys and girls, isn't Jingle-O a very busy little elf? Ho, ho, yes. Now let's open our mailbag for today. Santa has lots of mail for today, boys and girls, and our first letter today is from Karen and Sherry Jenkins and their little friend Cynthia Knickel, and Ronald and Wayne Wenzel, Heather and Valerie Eisner, and Karen and Lowell Dory, Nadine, Elaine, and Rodney Sarty of Middlewood, Pauline and Joanne Hahn of LaHave, and Peggy Kaiser, Michael Maynard Roger and Rodney Larry, all of Simpson's Corner, and Sylvia, Sherilyn, and Stella Ritzie of Stanley Section, and also Jackie Beck of Bridgewater, and Floyd Hiltz and his little brother, and Travis, Blaine, Dana, and Stephanie Reeves of the 40s, and Angela, Elizabeth, and Elwood Feindl of Bridgewater are our number 1. And Gary Knickel of Auburndale, and Junior Knickel and Susan of Auburndale, and Charlene Robar of North River, and Clarence Cross, and Donna Bolivar, David, Bobby, and Terry Hubley of Conquerall Mills, Mary and Karen Daniels of Farmington, and Timmy Robar of Maplewood, and Gwen Robar of Farmington, Ken and Connie Lee Baker of Farmington, and Lorna Dory of Maplewood, and Donna Wenzel of Maplewood, and Darlene Ralph and Frances Varner of Stanburn, Charmaine Baker of New Germany, Milford and Chester Wynot of Upper Northfield, and Lester Weil of Waterloo, and Glenn Weil of Waterloo, and Linda and Kathy Falkenham of Laconia, Bruce and Barry O'Brien of Bar's Corner, that's Rhodes Corner, and Dawn and Ann Bolivar, and also Cheryl Bolivar, and Kevin, Diane, and Derek, and Paul Angel of Mater's Cove, and Deborah and Michael Frail, and Mike Mansfield, and Rose Frail, and Robert Jeffrey and Rosalie Roy of Liverpool, and Harry Lake, and John and Fred Lannon, and Otis Oikel, and Bobby Chandler, all of Liverpool, Marcia Fancy of Chelsea, and Kendall McLean of Bar's Corner, Kathy Vino of Martins Brook, and Bobby and Rodney Weigel, Deanna Wynot, Carolyn Slonwhite of Danesville, and Kevin, Owen, Donna, Susan, Keith, and Karen Bonvie of Danesville, Joy and Linda Johnson, Gail, Ann, Bobby, and Alex Melanson of Mill Village, and Harley Conrad, and Tina Coolin of Camperdown, Marie Slonwhite and Burton Schrader, and Paulette Wambo and Jack Rayfuse and Melda Llewellyn, Wayne Nogler and Joyce Nogler, John Maughan and Marilyn Rafuse, Wayne Herman and Alice Wiggle, Buddy Croft, Donna Publicover and Donnie Drew, Diane Baker, and Bobby James, Marjorie Publicover, and David Thompson, Linda Jefferson and Gary Nogler, Maxine McKinnon and Harold Zink, and Irene Westabo and Jerry Elliott, and Glenda Richard and Bobby Montgomery, and Glenda Maynard and Jerry Wynot, Susan and Ronald Conrad of Eagle Head, and Linda and Marilyn Witherall, and Bob Banks of Nicktaw, Kendall Publicover, Elaine, and it looks like Maureen, but it could be Marnie or Maxine, and Burton and Marlon Wenzel, and Deborah and Kevin Noss of Conquerall Mills, and Gary, Stephen, Debbie, and Wilfred Gallant of Bridgewater, and Susan, Kathy, June, Jodry of Bridgewater, and Orban and Lawrence Langell of Blockhouse, Beverly Wagner of Bridgewater, Darrell Pierce of Martins River, Barry Hiltz of Martins River, and Ann Campbell and Opal Hiltz of Martins River, Kathy Phyllis and Jenny Barkhouse of Martins Point, and baby Oral Barkhouse of Martins Point, and Raymond Wagner of Bridgewater, Fay Peter and Roger Barry of Maitland, and Marcia Langell of Blockhouse, Dwight and Gerald Barry of Maitland, and Kendall Lonis of Blockhouse, Kevin and Douglas Ernst of Blockhouse, Dale and Deborah Oikel of Maitland, and Lynn Barry of Maitland, and Margaret Lowe and Dwight Crosland, Harry Noss, Barbara Sudrick, and Susan Vino of Blockhouse, and Murray Broom of Oak Hill, and Ralph Barry, Maitland, and Patrick Smith of Indian Point, and Judy Mader of Clearland, Stella Barry of Maitland, Gilbert, Emily, Barbara, and Virginia Oikel of Maitland, and Laura Ernst of Maitland, and Jean and Deborah Oikel of Maitland. And we have a letter from Blockhouse, RR number 1. Donald and Donna Vino of Sweetland, Carrie and Chris Oikel of Big Lots, Gary, Cheryl, Annette, and Brenda of Shefferville, Quebec, and Debbie and Brian Wenzel of Lower LaHave, Pauline Baker of Baker Settlement, and Susan and Kathy Jodry of Maitland, and Patty Ann Proulx of Victoria, BC, and Rosaline and Irma Vino of Sweetland. And we have a letter here from Oak Hill, and it's from Guillaume and Fitzy Laws and their little baby sister, Jeffreen. And also says, don't forget our cousins, John and Joanne and Darlene, who lives in Germany. That's not New Germany, that's in Germany. Little Ricky Anthony of Charleston, Sheila and Darlene Smith of Hemford, Ellen and Elfrida MacDonald of St. Catherine's River, and Gary, Gordon, Gregory, and Wade Townsend of Port Jolly, Morris Wagner of Central Port Mattoon, and his cousin Brian Knowles of Crosstown, Jean and Lee Zink of New Germany, Edna Tufts and little Cindy Simpson, Sheila Bush and Joey Snare of Pence, and Joseph Ullman and Vincent Weigel of Bridgewater, Carlton Smith, Susan Snare, Aubrey Smith, Judy Woodworth, Diane, Paulette, Teddy, David, and little Karen Lonis of Watford, and some boys and girls from RR number 1, Italy Cross, Dwayne Nogler and Melba Llewellyn, Gary Nogler, and Doreen Llewellyn, Wayne Herman and Marilyn Rafuse and Jack Rafuse, Paulette Wambolt, and Joyce Nogler and John Maughan, and Louise Wiggle, Gerald Hatt, and Donald Wynot of Danesville, Gail and Valerie Conrad of Eagle Head, Errol Hurtle and little Brenda Hurtle, and Carl, Tony, Ivan, Doreen, Christine, Betty Ann, and Bonnie Sue Daniels, Geraldine, Sherilyn, and Miles Robar of North River, and Timothy Robar of Maplewood, Bobby Lonis, Freeman Lonis, and Douglas Cross of East Berlin, Elma Wagner and David Conrad of West Berlin, Spencer Bagley and Ronnie Burns, David Culp, and Eric Williams of Eagle Head, and Walter Chandler, Carlton Fairley, George Shediac, and Mervyn Williams of Beach Meadows, Billy and Jerry Stevens of Port Medway, and Pat, David, Billy, and Jerry Parnell of Mill Village, Peggy and Shirley Nodding of Riverport, and Anna Barse of Rose Bay, Janet and George Rodenizer of Farmington, Beverly and Sharon Hebb, Gail Lonis, Karen Oikel, and Teddy Wilson, and Charlotte Fillmore, and Marilyn Baker, and Sharon Vino, and Judy Lonis, and Gary Lonis, and Carol Bly, and Nancy Feener, and Cheryl Johnson, Frances Foley, and Carolyn Johnson of Bridgewater, and Lee Speidel, Gerald Wagner, and Garnet Swigger, Ralph McLean, and Bruce Baker, Bernie, Dick, and Mervyn Bolivar of Baker Settlement, and Terry, Clayton, Wendy, Virginia, Raymond, William, and Leo McCauley of Bayport, and Ricky and Blair Jodry of East Port Medway. And we have a letter here from Bridgewater, from Cheryl and Marcia and Janet Lowe, and Liza Graham and Andrew Kerr, and also Nolan, Sherry, and Wanda Fancy of Dalhousie, and Linda, Robert, and Donald Oikel of Lower Northfield, Sheila, Valerie, and Kevin Croft of Chester Grant, and Connie Rafuse, Tammy Rafuse, Kathy Barkos, Jenny Barkos, and Phyllis Barkos of Martins Point, Bobby Barkos, Kevin Bishop, and Richard Bishop of Mahone Bay, and Kevin and Ray Fancy of Bridgewater, Donna and Peggy Cook, Shirley and Michael Wenzel of Branch LaHave, and Sherry, Edward, and Mark Vino of Clearland, Elaine, Marlene, and Christine Zink of Clearland, Brian and Tarina Hubley, and Christine Speidel of Lower New Cornwall, Colleen and Barry Dimone of Winnipeg, and Elwood Vino, and Fern Wenzel, Chester Zink of Maplewood, and little Kenny Huey of Utopia, Ontario, Michael Clyde and Arnold Swigger of Gold River, Maxine Meisner of West Northfield, and the Smiley family of Port Medway Lighthouse. And there's Ethel, Janice, Teresa, Juanita, Eunice, Merle, Ralph, Clarence, and Guy, and Marilyn, David, Gary, and Brian Snare, and Jeff Croft, and Wayne McKenzie, Alan Vino, Debbie Crow, Lawson Miller, Jackie Chandler, Vicky and Sheila Oikel of Lower Northfield, and Goldie, Ivan, Susan, and Kathy Jodry, and Helen, Joan, and Ricky Meisner, and Linda Keeping, and Philip, Keith, and Gary Slonwhite, and baby Michael Bolivar, and Shirley, Sharon, Charles, David, and Roger Slonwhite, and Irma, Donna, and Donald Vino, and Darlene and Cedric Vino, and baby Cindy Pearl, and Lee, Yvonne Clayton, and Paulette Noss of Sweetland. Well, ho, 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 there's all the mail for today. Ho, ho, Santa gets many, many letters and cards at Christmas time, boys and girls. Well, boys and girls, tomorrow night it's Christmas Eve, and that's when Santa makes his big trip around the world. So be extra good, boys and girls, and be sure to play and coast in a safe place. Bye for today, boys and girls. See you tomorrow. Ho, 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 ho!